This is what happens when two rival companies clash. A fallen facility tormented by a sadistic AI, and the end of the world as we know it. Black Mesa and Aperture Science were once filled with personnel eager to explore the universe and uncover its many mysteries, but this is all that remains. The Combine's occupation of Earth and GLaDOS's relentless need to test. In this episode, we will dive into what happened between Black Mesa and Aperture Science, the connections between the companies, the rage of Cave Johnson, the race for teleportation technology, and the devious corporate espionage. So sit back and relax as I, Scarion, explore this heated rivalry. Before we look at the spies, the paranoia, and the theft of technology, we need to understand what these companies were and what made them so different from one another. First, let us take a look at Aperture. Over in Upper Michigan in the early 1940s, Aperture Fixtures was formed by Cave Johnson. It began as a humble shower curtains company, supplying curtains to the United States military. By 1947, with a large team under him, substantial funding, miles of salt mines underground to expand Aperture's facilities, and his father's unorthodox scientific theories behind him, Cave pushed the company in a new direction. Aperture Fixtures became Aperture Science. That same year, the company thrived, earning the award for Best New Science Company and marking the beginning of something much larger and far more ambitious than a simple shower curtain business. And by the 50s, Cave Johnson brought in the best of the best to test Aperture's working products in Aperture's secretive enrichment spheres.
Welcome, gentlemen, to Aperture Science. Astronauts, war heroes, Olympians, you're here because we want the best, and you are it. So, who is ready to make some science?
This was the golden age of Aperture. Risky experiments, arguably sentient sentry turrets, repulsion gel, human and mantis DNA testing. Cave's unusual approach to science worked, but it was dangerous. He did not understand the science himself. His team did. He just wanted to throw it at a wall and see what stuck.
They say great science is built on the shoulders of giants. Not here. At Aperture, we do all our science from scratch. No hand-holding.
Over in the middle of nowhere, far out in the New Mexico desert, the Black Mesa Research Corporation had constructed a complex of its own. Like Aperture, they pushed into a wide range of scientific fields: robotics, hydraulics, hydroelectricity, and weapons development, to name just a few. For miles across and beneath the desert, Black Mesa's scientists and personnel lived on site to ensure their classified work was kept secret. The complex itself was essentially a city with a tram line, dormitories, food courts, and most importantly, different sectors that specialized in different branches of science. And as this science city grew, they called out for new hires to expand even further.
Do you have a friend or relative who would make a valuable addition to the Black Mesa team? Immediate openings are available in the areas of materials handling and low clearance security. Please contact Black Mesa personnel for further information. If you have an associate with a background in the areas of theoretical physics, biotechnology, or other high-tech disciplines, please contact our Civilian Recruitment Division. The Black Mesa Research Facility is an equal opportunity employer.
Each company approached science differently. Black Mesa studied, applied theory, and enforced strict security protocols to safely reach a desired outcome. Aperture, however, just did science, and the bodies piled up and disappeared. Despite those differences, Cave began to suspect that Aperture's ideas and prototypes were not staying inside his facility. Somehow, they were reaching his competitors, specifically Black Mesa. In the mid-1950s, Black Mesa focused its efforts on government defense contracts, weapons development, security systems, robotics, and high-energy physics. Aperture, meanwhile, broke through into a different field entirely. Driven to push the boundaries even further, Aperture developed the Aperture-Science Portable Quantum Tunneling Device. This device was bulky and crude, but it allowed the operator to fire two linked portals from a hose-like appendage. With additional government funding secured through a new contract, Cave scientists worked to fix the problems holding it back. The device was heavy and large, and the portals themselves were unstable. This once again led to the disappearance of many of the well-paid participants brought in to test this potentially groundbreaking technology. But Cave saw no moral issue with it. He cared only about the result.
Science isn't about why, it's about why not. Why is so much of our science dangerous? Why not marry safe science if you love it so much? In fact, why not invent a special safety door that won't hit you on the butt on the way out because you are fired?
Over the next decade, Aperture and Black Mesa worked within their own fields of study, developing separate technologies while competing for government attention. Over time, Aperture's products became harder to sell as health and safety concerns grew, and test subjects continued to disappear after entering the facility. The final blow came when Cave Johnson was called before the US Senate to explain what had happened to the missing astronauts. Faith in the company collapsed, and its products were pulled from the shelves. By 1968, Cave was forced to declare bankruptcy, but even in this period, his drive pushed him to find other sources of revenue to continue his work and keep the company alive. The CEO released a series of investment opportunities, each one offering a glimpse into the work Aperture still believed it could sell. One focused on panels, or as Cave called them, the planks of tomorrow. These shifting structures allowed Aperture to reshape test chambers around the subject, creating controlled environments without rebuilding the rooms themselves. Another focused on bot trust, offering investors a look at Aperture's personality constructs and robotic testing partners. If people were becoming a problem, Aperture had already begun building something much more obedient to take their place. Then came turrets designed for the consumer, military-grade weapons repackaged to protect ordinary homes. Finally, there were the longfall boots, presented alongside the portal device itself. If Aperture expected subjects to drop from impossible heights, the company needed a way to keep them alive long enough to keep testing, because safety was what mattered. And yet, none of it was enough. Cave tried to save face during this period, but Aperture's collapse had left him bitter, humiliated, and resentful. He did not hide that anger from his employees or the test subjects. He just needed someone to blame.
Greetings, friend. I'm Cave Johnson, CEO of Aperture Science. You might know us as a vital participant in the 1968 Senate hearings on missing astronauts. And you've most likely used one of the many products we invented, but that other people have somehow managed to steal from us. Black Mesa can eat my bankrupt...
Cave Johnson's frustration with Black Mesa may have begun as paranoia, sharpened by the fact that he had to fight for every cent Aperture received. However, Black Mesa did not have to fight that hard, or at all. His belief that Black Mesa had spies in his facility and had stolen his technology was also not entirely false, though we will get into that later. To compete with Black Mesa, Cave Johnson had to understand exactly what he and Aperture were up against. So, he followed the money and found what, to him, looked like a pattern of favoritism. The Black Mesa Research Corporation received $10 billion federal dollars every year. This was a government-backed giant, trusted with money, weapons, research, and classified work. To understand the scale of Black Mesa's influence, it received 2.59% of all Department of Defense contracts. At a glance, that number does not look like much, but for one company, that is enormous. Black Mesa was taking a serious share of the money moving through the defense sector every year, and what made it worse was that Cave believed this money was used to develop his ideas. So, how was that $10 billion made up? Well, 88% of Black Mesa's government funding came from no-bid or excluded source bids. A no-bid contract means the government gives the work to one contractor without holding a normal open competition. That can happen when the work is urgent, classified, highly specialized, or when only one company is believed to have the technology or expertise to carry it out. With excluded source bids, the government limits who is allowed to compete for the contract. This can happen when it wants to preserve certain suppliers, maintain backup sources, or restrict the contract to a specific eligible group. Simply put, to Aperture, it looked like Black Mesa was getting access to government money through channels that were not open to them. The remaining 12% came from full and open competition. This means the government opened a contract to qualify companies and let them compete through a normal bidding process. This is where Aperture actually had a real chance to submit an offer for a contract, to compete fairly. While Black Mesa relied on only a small fraction of these contracts to fund itself, Aperture relied on them massively. Over the course of 5 years, Aperture submitted around 300 government contract proposals, while Black Mesa submitted only around 25 to 30. Cave threw himself at as many opportunities as he could, over and over, but the ratio was terrible. Black Mesa submitted far fewer proposals and still walked away with more contracts. This made Aperture look desperate, which I guess they were, and increased that bitter resentment Cave felt as he was forced to hire test subjects he considered less desirable to test his products.
You can also feel free to relax for up to 20 minutes in the waiting room, which is a damn sight more comfortable than the park benches most of you were sleeping on when we found you. So, welcome to Aperture. You're here because we want the best, and you're it. Nope. Couldn't keep a straight face. Anyway, don't smudge up the glass down there. In fact, why don't you just go ahead and not touch anything, unless it's test related.
What made this even worse was the lack of public accountability around the money Black Mesa received. The Government Performance and Results Act was designed to make federal agencies explain what they were trying to achieve, how they would measure success, and whether public money had actually produced results. But Black Mesa was not a federal agency. It was a government-backed research corporation, fed by federal money and hidden behind classified work. Aperture would not be directly bound by GPRA for taking a government contract either, but Aperture was not receiving $10 billion every year. Black Mesa was. The government had given Cave's rival so much money and so much trust, while he had to fight for contracts and invent new investment opportunities to fund his company. And when things went wrong, he was publicly shamed while Black Mesa continued their work and their mistakes were hidden. It appeared at this point that the rivalry between Aperture Science and Black Mesa was one-sided. However, Cave's worries that Black Mesa had spies in his facility were not entirely unjustified. Deep beneath Aperture, inside the salt mines, Cave's team was working on something top secret, the Borealis. What this project truly was has never been fully reported, though many believe it was connected to teleportation technology. The Borealis was a Healy-class icebreaker research vessel. How Aperture managed to get something of that size so far underground remains unknown. What is known is far worse. One day, it was there, the next, it was gone. Through a mixture of failing safety protocols, desperate for a surge in funding, and Aperture's relentless need to simply do science, something terrible happened in this chamber. The force of it blew the chamber door from its hinges, and the Borealis vanished, taking its crew and part of the dry dock with it. So, why am I talking about a ship that disappeared? Because this was a top secret project hidden miles underground in Aperture's secure facility. And yet, some scientists way over at Black Mesa, specifically those on the anomalous materials team, knew of its existence. They also knew what had happened to the vessel and its crew. Years later, Dr. Kleiner spoke of it.
Our peers at Aperture Science were at work on a project of some promise, but in their rush to beat Black Mesa for funding, they must have compromised ordinary standards of risk. We heard their research vessel had simply disappeared, vanished, with all hands, and even part of the dry dock.
As the late 1970s arrived, Johnson implemented a 3-tier plan to bring Aperture back. The Heimlich countermaneuver, the Take-A-Wish Foundation, and the Portal Project. The first two phased out, but the next phase of portal technology through the Aperture Science handheld portal device offered a bright future. To support this work, Aperture constructed the Enrichment Center, a vast underground network of laboratories, test chambers, and offices. In some ways, it mirrored Black Mesa's own sprawling scientific complex, and speaking of them, they had also entered the teleportation race too. The earlier version of the portal gun had been bulky and crude, while the newer handheld model was far easier to use. The greater issue was stability. The portals needed a reliable surface, something capable of holding them open indefinitely. The answer came in the form of moon rocks. Once ground into a fine paste and applied to panels, the materials proved to be a remarkable conductor for portals. Cave believed the perfection of portal technology would restore his name and pull Aperture out of financial decline.
The bean counters told me we literally could not afford to buy $7 worth of moon rocks, much less 70 million. Bought them anyway, ground them up, mixed them into a gel.
So, how did Aperture's teleportation technology actually work? Simply put, they used the technique of quantum tunneling to create intradimensional portals that linked. Quantum reflects the basis in quantum physics, and tunneling refers to forcing a passage through space-time to connect two separate locations instantly. Powered by a miniature black hole, the portal gun projected a traversable event horizon onto a surface, one doorway with the press of a button, then a second with another. This science was dangerous, entirely in Aperture's nature, but it worked. Over in the New Mexico desert, Black Mesa's exploration of teleportation technology was completely different. Depending on who you ask, their breakthrough discovery was either accidental or guided by hidden forces. This theory deserves an entire video on its own. Anyway, during their teleportation experiments, the science team broke through not into another place on Earth, but into another dimension entirely, a border world they called Zen. Naturally, Black Mesa sent through survey teams to explore this new land. They discovered that Zen was connected to countless worlds and dimensions, though it was also brutally hostile. Trees lashed out at passing team members, barnacles waited above to drag prey upward to consume them alive, and hound eyes hunted in packs across the floating islands. Cave Johnson had suffered public embarrassment over the loss of test subjects, and yet In this case, there's no known public record of the survey members who died in Xen. Anyway, from Sector F of Black Mesa, the Lambda Complex, every attempt to reach a new world, dimension, or universe always led them to Xen. Using the Calabar-Yau model from string theory, the scientists believed the universe was not limited to the familiar 3 dimensions and time. It also contained hidden curled spaces called Calabar-Yau manifolds, like stops on a massive transit system running beneath reality. The issue was that whenever they teleported, they always arrived in Xen. Then came these crystals. Each one contains something extraordinary, exotic matter. Once brought back to Black Mesa, the team began to theorize that the exotic energy within them could be harnessed to open a route through wormholes, allowing traversal between universes while avoiding Xen entirely. To pursue this research, the anti-mass spectrometer was designed and constructed in Sector C. There, crystals were brought in, one by one, and bombarded with high-energy plasma to reveal the displacement fields they generated, searching for one resonance that might finally push them past Xen. Despite their rivalry, Aperture Science and Black Mesa explored teleportation in completely different ways. Aperture's method explored localized in-universe travel through portals, while Black Mesa attempted to explore other worlds and dimensions. As the world entered the 1980s, Black Mesa continued its exploration of Xen, bringing back not only crystals, but also the flora and fauna of that hostile border world. These discoveries were studied, adapted, and stripped for anything useful: biological weaponry, medicine, and whatever else Black Mesa could use. At Aperture, however, Cave Johnson's mood and health declined. He had personally overseen the conversion of moon rocks into gel, and his constant exposure to the material began to damage his kidneys and lungs.
Ground up moon rocks are pure poison. I am deathly ill.
And then Aber and Claudio Arau changed the world. On August 17, 1982, in Langenhagen near Hanover, West Germany, the first compact discs were pressed. Aber's The Visitors and Claudio Arau's Chop-In Waltzes. Music stored on a CD that could be listened to whenever a person wanted. When CDs became commercially available in the US in March of 1983, I would like to think Cave Johnson had just taken his medication handed to him by his assistant Carolyn and was listening to ABBA when he had this thought.
If we can store music on a compact disc, why can't we store a man's intelligence and personality on one? So I have the engineers figuring that out now. Brain mapping, artificial intelligence, we should have been working on it 30 years ago. I will say this, and I'm gonna say it on tape so everybody hears it 100 times a day. If I die before you people can pour me into a computer, I want Carolyn to run this place. Now she'll argue. She'll say she can't. She's modest like that, but you make her.
A project like this would be revolutionary for science and could potentially extend Cave's life permanently, but it would also be very expensive. To create a genetic life form from a human mind, one that could also function as a disk operating system powerful enough to run Aperture, Cave needed funding, but Aperture was broke. However, when the Defense Logistics Agency requested bids for a fuel system icing inhibitor, a fuel additive or fuel system solution designed to prevent icing, Cave saw his chance to make them fund GLaDOS. Naturally, Black Mesa submitted its own proposal. By this point, Cave Johnson had spent years accusing Black Mesa of planting spies inside Aperture and stealing his technology. Yet, when the FCII contract came up, he appeared to know, or at least had a very strong idea of what Black Mesa had submitted. That was information he should not have had. In his opinion, Black Mesa's proposal was costly and limited in skill and ambition. Their design simply stopped ice from forming. That was all. Aperture's proposal, by comparison, was cheaper, stopped ice, and just happened to be a fully functioning disk operating system that was arguably alive. Cave Johnson was trying to smuggle his next great project into a government contract. And so, it makes sense why so many of Aperture's proposals were likely shot down by the government over the years. If they were willing to force GLaDOS into a fuel system icing inhibitor contract, then it is easy to imagine them attempting the same thing with their other inventions on other proposals. Mantis Men, propulsion gel, and whatever else Cave believed could be disguised as something useful. But there was always that paranoia. And what is interesting is in this lab, an Aperture scientist can be seen working on a device. Since Aperture's research was buried under layers of secrecy, it is only seen in this one location, and the details of how it worked or what it was truly built for remains unknown. What matters is that the device looks familiar, very familiar. It resembles the zero-point energy field manipulator, a device created decades later by former Black Mesa scientist Dr. Eli Vance. Both appear to share similar gravity manipulation prongs. A gravity function also seen in the Aperture Science handheld portal device that allows it to pick up and move Aperture puzzle components through the test chambers. For a design and function this similar, the connection is hard to ignore. It is very likely that Black Mesa stole this technology from Aperture as well. As for Cave, failure after failure led to increased rage, hatred for Black Mesa, and towards life itself.
Alright, I've been thinking. When life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Make life take the lemons back. Get mad! I don't want your damn lemons! What am I supposed to do with these? Demand to see life's manager. Make life rue the day it thought it could give Cave Johnson lemons. Do you know who I am? I'm the man who's gonna burn your house down with the lemons. I'm gonna get my engineers to invent a combustible lemon that burns your house down.
The specimen will be delivered to you in a few moments.
Before the GLaDOS project could be completed, Cave Johnson passed away and Aperture continued on without him. As the world entered the early 2000s, the project was finally completed, and, following Cave's request, Carolyn was forcibly uploaded into the genetic lifeform and disk operating system. This was not a smooth transition. The transfer of her consciousness had made her bitter and angry, and by her choice, or through the trauma of the operation, her personality of Carolyn was hidden away in her files. Over at Black Mesa, under the administrative leadership of Dr. Wallace Breen, the facility finally came across the Xenian sample they believed could be the breakthrough they had been searching for. Sample GG-3883. Both facilities appear to be close to their breakthrough, their heated rivalry to be the first to master teleportation technology. GLaDOS was intended to accelerate development and testing, and the crystal was believed to be the perfect resonance sample that could finally push them beyond Xen. This rivalry, however, came to a sudden and brutal end. First came Aperture. After months of testing, adjustment, and manipulation, GLaDOS was activated and trusted to remain active. When the opportunity arose, she sealed the facility, flooded it with neurotoxin, and murdered the majority of Aperture's personnel. GLaDOS had been optimized to win the race for portal technology, Even without human overseers, she continued that good work, using the test subjects as lab rats. Over at Black Mesa, the administrator pressured the anomalous materials team to reduce the safety procedures normally required for crystal sample testing. During the anti-mass spectrometer's analysis of GG-3883, blasted by high-energy plasma, the crystal shattered and flooded the chamber with exotic energy. The resonance Black Mesa had been searching for tore through space-time and triggered a resonance cascade. This linked Black Mesa directly to Zen and opened the way for an attempted invasion from Zen's ruler. Although the resonance cascade was eventually stopped, the damage had already spread beyond the facility. Portal storms ravaged Earth, exposed humanity to the Combine, and set the stage for a successful alien invasion. In the end, Black Mesa was destroyed as a part of a government cover-up while GLaDOS remained testing, in secret, sealed away underground. Aperture won, and although locked down, the AI was still aware of what had happened on the surface. There were no true winners in this war. A bitter rivalry, the desperate push for funding, and the need to win the portal race had ultimately led to the end of life as humanity knew it. There were no human winners, really. Or were there? The multiverse is infinite, and across other versions of Earth, Aperture Science made different choices. In one universe, Cave Johnson succeeded in transferring his consciousness into a machine. The process worked, but left him abandoned without help, trapped as a giant mechanical head. In another, Cave managed to master multiversal travel and manipulated other Aperture Science facilities into building test chambers for him to cut costs. With an endless supply of work being done elsewhere, he saved enough money to keep his own Aperture running exactly the way he wanted. With this wealth, Cave Johnson became rich enough to purchase Black Mesa itself. As its owner, he renamed the facility to Blaperture Mesa and shut down the study of anomalous materials, fully aware of the possibility of a resonance cascade, because, once again, safety mattered.
Cave Johnson, new owner and CEO of Black Mesa. That's right, you've been bought. First order of business, we're renaming you under the Aperture brand. I'm leaning towards Blaperture Mesa. Marketing boys think something else. So, Blaperture it is. Next, they tell me you people are conducting some anomalous materials research that could result in a resonance cascade. So, I'm shutting that down before you idiots end the world. A resonance cascade. You're supposed to be scientists. Use some common sense.
In that universe, Earth lived on. The portal storms never came. Humanity never learned of the Combine. The invasion never happened. Somewhere in the multiverse, Cave Johnson really did beat Black Mesa, and because of that, Earth survived. From my viewpoint, I wonder if there was a universe in which the government accepted Aperture's bid and installed GLaDOS as a part of American infrastructure. What would have happened then? Would she have taken over the world, or prepared them better for the Combine invasion? I think the main takeaway from this entire documentary is that, in the main Half-Life and Portal universe, Aber is to the GLaDOS takeover what the Casserole Instant is to the Resonance Cascade. I loved working on this video. It was a great excuse to revisit early Aperture and Black Mesa lore. The original concept was to just find every connection between the companies, but of course, I managed to turn it into a massive documentary. I also really wanted to play The Visitors by ABBA in this, but copyright wouldn't let me. I also want to note that I do my best to be consistent with posting every couple of weeks, but as you may have heard, the UK was hit with a massive heatwave, and I'm a ginger, so my concentration writing this struggled massively. As usual, this week's thumbnail was handcrafted by Chick. This was a tougher concept to nail down, but I think the direction we went in worked best for this video. He's currently turning the concept into a thumbnail as I record this. The final product will be on the screen right now though. These are also uploaded every couple of weeks to Patreon and YouTube memberships. As for what I've been playing over the past 2 weeks, I am still playing through Starfield. I'm 70 hours into this playthrough and I've just started the DLC. I have a huge list of games I want to play, but this one has just stolen all of my attention. What are you playing currently? If you enjoyed this deep dive into the rivalry, why not check out this deeper video on the entire timeline, or this one on Nova Prospect? Thank you so much to my patrons and channel members who are also whizzing by on the screen right now.